5 years. That's how long the silence lasted. After decades of brutal conflict, humanity and the Valari signed the Treaty of Oran. It wasn't built on trust, wasn't built on respect. It was built on exhaustion, mutual and total, a ceasefire. They called it not peace, never peace. Human frontier colonies lived under that fragile agreement like a thin sheet of glass stretched over a minefield. Every supply drop, every system ping, every distant sensor flare was followed by a breath held and a heartbeat skipped. But the Valari were quiet. Too quiet. Colony Luma 5 was nestled on the edge of the rim, technically just inside the safe zone. Defined by the treaty, it wasn't a military outpost. No weapons grid, no armored fleet, just scientists, engineers, and families with hopeful eyes and oxygen filters. The last transmission from Luma 5 was routine. Hydroponics running. Stable, local atmosphere, near breathable. Forward station, requesting additional microfusion cores. Expecting shipment on cycle 78. Nothing strange. Nothing suspicious. Just the quiet hum of human progress. Then dash silence. No distress signal. No black box ping. No visual. Just gone. Command at Vega Station assumed sensor failure. It had happened. Before in dust storms, they sent a scout drone. The drone never returned. Then a patrol vessel. Nothing. No wreckage. No debris. Only an empty orbit and ash in the winds below, and then came the data burst. Delayed by the storm layers, colony compromised. Valari ships detected, no warning, no survivors. Pete Lima 5 has fallen. The message ended with a short video feed. It lasted 11 seconds. The footage showed the colony's central plaza. Children playing near a vertical garden. Adults loading crates into a transport rover. The sky above shimmered first with sunlight, then with fire. Alien drop pods fell. Like daggers, the image pixelated. They then vanished in a haze of static and screaming. When the video ended, Fleet Command went quiet. No debates, no panels. No diplomatic calls, just silence in that moment. Everyone understood the treaty was dead. It hadn't been broken with words or declarations. It was broken in fire, in betrayal, in the quiet, merciless extermination of a colony that never raised a weapon. And as the stars turned over another cycle above Earth, a single encrypted signal was sent from Central Command to a ship stationed deep within. Sol's orbital defense array, a short message, only 6 words. Send the resolution. Deliver. The message. Humanity wasn't going to start a war. They were going to end a mistake. Asterisk, the sun never sets over Earth's orbit. Not anymore. From the viewport of Station Aegis, Earth looked serene, a blue and white sphere suspended in the black. But those who lived aboard Aegis knew better. They didn't admire Earth's beauty, they guarded it, watched it, listened for the storm that always came back. Commander Hale stood inside the command rotunda, hands behind his back, eyes on the display wall. Before him floated projections, satellite telemetry, decoded communications, scripted fragments from distant systems all centered on a single blinking red node labeled Luma-5. It was no longer blinking. Still no recovery from the site? Lay asked without turning. Lieutenant Aron, young but sharp, replied flatly, "Nothing, sir. Not a whisper. Not even from the backup relays. Luma 5 is gone. Sterilized." The word hung in the air like a blade. Sterilized was a term reserved for planetary. Cleansing's total annihilation of infrastructure, life, and memory. Even the soil becomes inert, laced with nanite residue or radiation pulses. It meant someone didn't just destroy a place, they wanted it forgotten. Hale's jaw tensed. He had served long enough to know what came next. He didn't like it. But he didn't resist it either. Behind him, the sealed conference doors hissed open. He turned and saluted instinctively. The faces before him were not soldiers, they were worse. Civilians with authority. Members of the Earth Assembly Council, patched in via hololink from Geneva, Luna Prime, in Olympus Moss. They appeared as flickering statues, standing around the command table like digital ghosts. "Commander Hale," one voice said, hollow through encryption filters. "The Valari have violated the Treaty of Orin," another added. "We have attempted contact with their high chamber. No response. Their communications are cloaked. 3 more outer colonies have ceased transmitting. Within proximity to Luma 5. Hale nodded slowly. He wasn't surprised. Valari tactics were always surgical and silent. No mess, no broadcasts, no witnesses. It was less a declaration of war and more a test. "How do you wish to proceed?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. A third hologram, the elder delegate from Luna, Prime leaned forward. "We send a message." She said. "Final, unambiguous. Not a declaration, not a plea. Statement of consequences." "And if they don't listen?" Hal asked. The Geneva delegate answered coldly. "Then we stop talking." The air inside the rotunda chilled. Not from the temperature of geostation. Never wavered, but from the weight of what was being said. Hal activated his wrist console. Virtual file shimmered into the air. Resolution Protocol, Tier Omega. Below it, a personnel roster. A classified payload manifest. A diplomatic codebook last used during the siege of Halion 7. "You want me to deliver it?" he asked. "You were there when the treaty was signed," Luna Prime replied. "And you watched them break it." Alay looked down at Earth again. A light sound in the lights over New Avalon blinked faintly in the shadow of the continent. Somewhere down there, families were eating dinner. Kids were watching vidcasts. Workers were leaving. Factories unaware that the stars had turned hostile again. He tapped the console. The protocol accepted his biometric imprint with a soft chime. "I'll take the resolution," he said. "But I'm not bringing a warning." The Geneva delegate raised an eyebrow. "What will you bring then?" Commander Hale looked back. At the map, the red node over Luma 5 had gone black. "A reminder," he said, "of what we become when we're ignored." The delegates nodded in grim silence. Behind the rotunda walls, preparations began. A ship was being readied. Not a warship, not a courier. Something in between. Asterisk. The ship was not built for peace. The Resolution had the outward appearance of a diplomatic vessel's leak, polished, emblazoned with the silver crest of the Earth's assembly. It flew no battle flags. No visible weapons adorned its hull. Its engines pulsed with calm, steady light. From a distance, it projected neutrality. But from up close, anyone trained to see it would know. This was not a peace envoy. It was a scalpel precise. Silent and intended to cut deeply when used, Commander Hale walked its corridors like a man stepping through memory. He had flown warships during the last Valari campaign. Carriers, cruisers, drop platforms. But Resolution was different. Didn't carry battalions or orbital cannons. Carried something more dangerous finality. The ship's design was sleek, but dense. Every inch had purpose. The command bridge, wrapped in pressure-sensitive glass, was built to survive direct kinetic strikes. Every deck had dual shielding. Its communication suite could pierce black zone jammers. Its I-core, Argent, was combat-rated but diplomacil, octanless, overridden. In the heart of the ship, beneath 2 levels of armored lattice sat a black alloyed vault. Inside it was a box. Simple, Matt. Unmarked. No hinges. No access points. Just a cube barely larger than a bread loaf. The crew didn't know what it contained. Only Hale had the key, and even he didn't know what would happen if it had to be opened. The crew was lean 20 in total. No uniforms, no rank insignias. Every member had been chosen through the black. Channels of Earth's Assembly's silent command, vetted not just for loyalty, but for resolve. They weren't soldiers. They weren't diplomats. They were the kind of people who had watched entire outposts fall and still stood up the next day to finish the job. The chief analyst, Myra, sat at the central halotable, studying Valari linguistic drift patterns. "Change their dialects," she muttered. "Low-band syntax is warped, maybe intentionally. Could be trying to mask internal dissent." Hallie nodded. "We're trying to confuse our automated translators. They'll still understand the message," she said without looking up. "We made it simple enough." In the engineering bay, Juno, the system's tactician, ran quiet simulations, stealth inserts, remote fallback activations, zero-atma emergency lockdowns, not because they expected combat, but because Earth no longer believed in guarantees. Even the ship's medic, Tomas, carried an override kit for neural blackouts and toxin sweeps. Hull had ordered every crew member to wear dual injection patches, one for stabilization, one for silence. If the mission went sideways, nobody would be captured alive. Not again. The Resolution launched in silence, slipping past Earth's orbital grid like a ghost. No ceremony, no farewell. Only a cold whisper through command channels. Outbound. Trajectory locked. Valari Prime. The stars opened like a door. As the ship entered slipspace, Commander Hale stood before the sealed vault. His hand hovered over the embedded biometric reader. Argent, the ship's AI, spoke softly. Final terms remain unopened. Shall I display mission protocol review? No, Hale replied. I don't need reminders. Just bring us to their doorstep. And if they refuse to listen? Argent asked. Hale's voice was calm, colder than space. Then they'll remember what happens when we stop talking. Slipspace shimmered around the Resolution, a tunnel of fractured light and bending time. Stars twisted, rearranged, disappeared. This was no longer diplomacy. This was a line drawn in interstellar dust. Valari Prime did not welcome visitors. From orbit, the planet appeared almost serene, mottled silver continent split by veins of obsidian sea, a glimmering world wrapped in cloud bands that shimmered like woven silk. But the serenity was a facade. Beneath that delicate skin lay a planet forged in paranoia and rigid control. As the Resolution slipped from slipspace into high orbit, it didn't broadcast a greeting. It didn't ask for permission. It simply appeared like judgment incarnate. Silently toward the Valari capital, the planet's orbital perimeter responded. Immediately, 4 escort crafts, blade-shaped and etched with shifting glyphs, rose from a hidden cradle station. Their hulls radiated heat signatures designed to mimic peaceful escort-class vessels, but their energy profiles said otherwise. They were armed, charged, waiting. Inside the Resolution's command bridge, Commander Hale stood with arms behind, his back as the alerts blinked red across the interface. Valari ships approaching in intercept formation, Mirror reported. No weapons locked yet. Standard intimidation play. Let them dance, Hale said. Argent's voice echoed softly over the intercom. Incoming Hale Valari diplomatic channel, cipher encoded. Translate. Visual only, Hale ordered. The holoscreen shimmered. A Valari figure materialized, tall and spindly, with translucent skin pulsing faintly over its bioluminescent skeletal structure. Its voice buzzed as if filtered through rust and static. Its mouth didn't move when it spoke. Human vessel. You approach sovereign space. State your intent. Then withdraw. Mira raised an eyebrow. That's their greeting now? There. Testing our posture, Hale replied. Let's show them our spine. He stepped forward into the camera's frame. No threats, no emotion. We're here on directive from the Earth's assembly. Final diplomatic exchange. You will grant landing. Clearance? The Valari didn't respond immediately. Its thin pupils narrowed to slits of burning amber. Then it cut the feed. A moment passed. Then the escorts broke formation and drifted aside. Clearance granted. The capital city of Kervahal stretched across the edge of a volcanic ridge, half buried in the stone, like an animal hiding its underbelly. Valari cities didn't soar, they tunneled. Entire administrative complexes rested below the surface, shielded from surveillance, hidden from strikes. Even their architecture whispered fear. The Resolution landed on Platform 17, a high plateau marked with a ceremonial crest that hadn't been used in decades. Once it had welcomed peace delegates from across the Orion span. Now it welcomed ghosts, as Hale stepped onto the tarmac. Flanked by Myra and Tomas, he noticed the silence. No crowds, no cameras, no press. Just a dozen guards and a robed attendant. Waiting beneath a black archway that shimmered with energy fields. Where's their high council? Mira asked quietly. Hale's eyes narrowed. watching, not brave enough to stand in the open, were led into a reception hall long, low-ceilinged, and deliberately dim. Valari disliked brightness. It reminded them of exposure, vulnerability. At the far end of the chamber, atop a dais of polished obsidian, stood a figure cloaked in crimson and ivory, thin arms folded. No crown, no regalia, just a gaze that felt like it scraped bone. The Speaker of Accord, the one who had signed the Treaty of Orin 5 years ago. I remember this room, Hale murmured to himself. I remember the promises. The speaker raised one arm slowly. We're not summoned, it said, voice devoid of inflection. Your presence here violates diplomatic tradition. You burned a human colony to the ground, Hale replied. Tradition doesn't matter anymore. The speaker blinked once, slowly. Luma 5 was a misunderstanding. A rogue fleet acting without central command. Mira's knuckles went white. Hale took a step forward. You sterilize civilians, children. Do you think we came here to argue semantics? The speaker tilted its head, reptilian and cold. If you seek war, you will find extinction. We offered you survival once. You should have accepted it. Quiet fell across the chamber. Even the Valari guards flinched. Hale reached into his coat and removed the small, matte black cube. He placed it gently at the foot of the dais. No more survival, he said. No more speeches. This is Earth's final message. The cube sat silently. No light, no sound, just presence. The speaker stared at it. Then it hailed. Then it did something Hale hadn't expected. It stepped backward. Only half a pace, but enough. A flicker of uncertainty. A whisper of fear, whole. Turned without another word and began walking toward the exit. As he passed Mira, she whispered, Do they even understand what's inside it? Doesn't matter, Hull said. They understand what it means. Behind them, the cube remained unopened, unexplained, and ticking asterisk. The Speaker of Accord stood motionless as the doors closed behind the humans. Even as their footsteps faded into the corridor's stone-lined silence, the alien leader's gaze remained fixed on the matte black cube resting at the foot of the dais. It did nothing. No flickers, no projections, no threat displays. Just a featureless object, small enough to fit in one hand, yet heavy with implication. Around the chamber, Valari advisors shifted. Silent glances passed between them, subtle but telling. They, too, had seen the human archives. They remembered the last war, even if they never fought in it. The cube's presence wasn't just ceremonial. It was calculated, intentional. Humans didn't bluff with symbolism. They delivered messages the way their species always had, plainly and with finality. The speaker descended the steps slowly. Its long fingers hovered over the cube but didn't touch. There were protocols for this security. Containment, remote scans, layered interpretations. But the longer it stared at the object, the more certain it became. It wasn't a weapon. Not in the physical sense. It was a mirror. The Valari hated mirrors. In a private chamber beneath the council halls, the cube was eventually transferred still, unopened to a containment vault. A team of strategists, biocryptographers, and social interpreters was assembled to dissect it. They moved like surgeons, speaking in curt tones, scanning with reverence. There were no seams, no digital signature. But when exposed to a directed pulse of radiation, the cube responded not with light but with sound. 3 simple notes, low, metallic, human in design. Signal used during ceasefire negotiations decades ago. The code for you've been heard, then silence. It was a test. No, worse, it was a countdown of a kind only humans would employ. Not to war, not to invasion, but to a choice. Back aboard the Resolution. Hale stood on the observation deck, hands clasped behind him, watching Valari Prime from low orbit. The planet no longer appeared serene. The clouds seemed tighter, more constricted. Its beauty was now brittle, like stained glass just before the shatter. Mira approached from the lift, holding a thin tablet. They've moved the cube to a secondary chamber. No formal statement issued, no broadcast, but a dozen Valari scout ships have left orbit in the last 2 hours. Outbound trajectories. Most likely internal deployments. Hal didn't respond at first. He simply watched the planet rotate. They're preparing contingencies. They're afraid, she added. They don't know what we sent, and they're too proud to ask. Good. Hole turned toward her. Then they've received the message exactly as intended. Mira hesitated. Before speaking again, you never opened the box. It's not even once. Don't you want to know what's inside? Hale looked at her, and for a moment, he wasn't the iron-framed officer or the envoy chosen by Earth. He was just a man who'd buried too many people and smiled too little. I know what's inside, he said softly. It's not a bomb, not a weapon. It's a story. Mira raised an eyebrow. Hale continued. A recording. One from the Luma 5 outpost. A few minutes of life. Just before the attack, laughter, children, workers, unloading food crates. Peace. We sent that to show them. What they destroyed, her face darkened.
Hey.
And if that doesn't move them, then the second part plays, he replied. Myra stiffened. There's more. He nodded. A message from the assembly. From Earth itself, not a threat, not even a demand, just a line. This is your final moment to choose, peace or silence. And the third part? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, if they still refuse. The cube transmits a signal to the drone fleet waiting outside their detection range, Hale said. Each one armed, each one targeted to blind, disable, and disarm. No loss of life, just proof of power. Proof that we're done talking. Mira stepped back. You really think they'll risk it? They already did, Hole said. Lumify was the last time we gave the benefit of the doubt. Down on Valari Prime, the speaker of Accord stood once more before the cube. Alone now, no advisors, no defenses. Its eyes flickered in indecision. It had seen many human gestures over the years' bombast. It cruelty, desperation, but never this. Never a quiet warning carved in memory and delivered in silence. The cube pulsed once more. Just a heartbeat of light, and then it waited, like the species that made it. Waiting for a choice. The cube pulsed one final time. It wasn't loud, didn't flash, didn't explode. But the pulse was measured, deliberate, unmistakably human. Deep within the vault chamber on Valari Prime, a brief vibration rippled across the floor. As the object registered environmental data, location, atmospheric pressure, the absence of interaction, and then ACTIV, ATIO, and A signal, microscopic and encrypted, beamed outward on a narrow band frequency that bypassed all known Valari detection protocols. It did not target Valari systems. It did not speak to the planet. It spoke to what circled quietly above them. In the cold emptiness, beyond Valari Prime's orbital veil, 42 autonomous satellites dormant, until now awoke, they were not. Weapons in the traditional sense, they carried no warheads, no mass drivers, no high-yield charges. Instead, they were designed to do something far more terrifying. Erased control. Each drone, shaped like a floating knife blade, locked onto its designated target. Defense grids, communication towers, energy relay nexuses, planetary surveillance webs. They did not strike. They disabled. Every system built to watch, to threaten, to coordinate rendered blind in the span of 90 seconds, one by one. Lights went dark across Valari Prime, and just as it had begun, it ended in silence. No fanfare, no declaration, just the sound of power being removed. Back aboard the Resolution, Commander Hale stood at the central console. Myra monitored the data stream with barely restrained urgency. Lines of red data flickered into green. Grid 7 offline. Regional Defense Network blind. Surface Levalis scans reporting massive Valari. Internal comms disruption. No alarms, no retaliation. They're scrambling, but they don't even know where to look. Hale simply nodded. They'll assume internal failure. At first, they'll know better soon, she added. Argent, the ship's AI cut in with smooth precision. Transmission from Valari Prime, encrypted but not hostile, routed through diplomatic channels. They've opened a line, Commander. It was Mira who leaned in, wide-eyed. Already? They're not stupid, Hallie said, just arrogant. No. And we just shattered their illusion of control.
Out.
On Valari Prime, panic spread not among civilians, but in the control chambers, among the military caste, the diplomats, the engineers. Systems failed without trace. Satellites vanished from the sky without destruction. Their surveillance feeds went black. Their defensive AI cores collapsed into looped static. It wasn't destruction, it was precision erasure. The Speaker of Accord stood in the high war chamber, surrounded by figures once too proud to whisper out. Now they demanded answers. They wanted protocol. They wanted war. But there was no one left to point fingers at. Only that cube. That silent cube, still resting where it had been placed. Without weapons, without a fleet, without even touching the planet's soil, humanity had paralyzed the Valariae. Message had been delivered, and the meaning behind it was clear. You are no longer the threat. We are. Hale stepped into the Resolution's comms chamber as the Valari signal was stabilized. The holographic feed buzzed, then resolved. The speaker who appeared, but another cloaked in gray eyes, dimmed, voice slow. Human envoy, we acknowledge your message. There was a pause, a hesitation so palpable it echoed through the static. Request. Discussion. Terms. We regret the incident at Luma 5. Mira muttered from behind Hell. That's as close to a confession as they'll ever give. Haley didn't smile. There was nothing amusing about forcing peace through silence. The Assembly will send representatives, he said, keeping his voice even. You will host them with full transparency. Any deviation, any betrayal land we return? Next time, we won't be gentle. The Valari official swallowed the words like poison. Then, the feed cut. Hale stood alone again, his silhouette framed by the stars beyond the viewport. You think they'll keep the agreement this time? Mira asked from the doorway. He didn't turn around. No, she frowned. Then why not finish it now? We've already crippled them. Hale's voice was quiet, almost distant. Because this wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Right. Mira nodded. Slowly, and what if they come back stronger? He turned at last, and there was something in his eyes, something steel-hard and old. Then so will we. The Resolution drifted silently above the wounded planet, a ghost in the void, carrying a people who had learned to speak softly only, so their final message would be heard without question. Asterisk. It was not the end of the war. There had been no formal declaration, no parades, no banners hanging in orbital cities declaring victory. What happened over Valari Prime wasn't a triumph. It was a warning. It's a kind of warning written into the bones of a civilization. In the days that followed, Valari Prime remained under a strange and suffocating quiet. Her skies once laced. With shimmering defense lines and constant data traffic were still, silent towers blinked without function. Command grids ran empty, sending signals into systems that no longer existed. The military caste collapsed inward, its members retreating into silence. Unable to explain how an entire planetary infrastructure had been rendered inert by a single human vessel, without a shot fired, inside the Valari halls of governance. Behind. Walls carved from volcanic crystal, the Speaker of Accord held emergency sessions with what remained of its leadership. They spoke in low, frantic tones, debating not retaliation but survival. Not once did anyone speak the word war, because war meant choice. The Resolution had proven that choice no longer belonged to them. It wasn't just what the humans had done that shook them. It was how they had done it. No grand speech, no violent spectacle. Just a box, a memory, and consequences delivered with surgical precision. They had expected fury, fire, retribution. Instead, they were handed a mirror made to stare at the reflection of their own arrogance. Far above, in the quiet dark. The Resolution remained in orbit for only 6 more hours. Commander Hale stood at the forward viewport as the vessel prepared for departure. The blue and black swirl of Valari Prime rotated slowly below, no longer gleaming with pride, but muted. Sobered, Mira approached quietly, holding a report. "They've sent the message to Earth Assembly," she said. "Formal request for a new diplomatic summit. Full cooperation. Third-party oversight. They've agreed to broadcast treaty-compliance signals from every planetary outpost." Halle gave a single nod. "And the colonies? Recovery units are en route to the burn sites. They're letting us in. No resistance. Not even a protest." Said nothing for a moment, then finally spoke. "That's the message." Mira frowned. "Which part?" Alo applied. "The children playing on Luma 5. The silence afterward. The black box. The fleet we never launched. It was never just about proving strength. It was about forcing memory into motion." Mira looked down at the report. "Think they'll remember?" "Ill. Have to," Hell said. "For the first time in their history, they were made vulnerable without being destroyed. That kind of lesson doesn't fade. It haunts." She looked at him, studying the lines in his face, the wear behind his eyes. "And what about us? What do we remember?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked back out at the stars, at the tapestry of pinpricks that once felt vast and distant. Now, just roads and markers in a galaxy smaller than it used to feel. "We remember that peace isn't the absence of war," he finally said. "It's the presence of consequence. And the courage to be the first to say, this far, no further." As the Resolution engaged its slipspace drive and left the shadow of Valari Prime behind, a new message was transmitted through secure diplomatic channels. One line, coded and logged into interstellar record by both human and Valari systems. Final message delivered. Awaiting reply, there would be no conquest. No new colonies claimed in the name of Earth. No trophies. Humanity didn't need them. They had spoken. It's not in rage, not in desperation, but in the measured language of a species that had endured, adapted, and learned what true power was. Not destruction, not dominance, memory, and this time the galaxy listened.